Aisha had been in love with Adamu since they were children, playing games of chase through the fields and swimming in the river. As they grew older, her affection only deepened. She hoped Adamu would notice what a caring, loyal partner she would make. But Adamu's roving eye wandered to another village girl named Lami. She had flowing dark hair and a flirtatious laugh that drove Adamu wild with desire. Despite Aisha's attempts to win his heart, Adamu fell hard for the alluring Lami. One warm summer night, after too much palm wine, Adamu and Lami found themselves alone together in a secluded glade. Their kissing and caresses quickly became heated passion. But the next morning, Adamu's heart turned cold. He had sealed Lami's fate by taking her virginity, but he did not truly love her. This was a mistake, Adamu told Lami bluntly as he prepared to leave. I cannot marry you. Lami's eyes filled with tears of shame and heartbreak as Adamu abruptly departed, showing no remorse for his callous actions. The foolish young man did not realize the consequences of his selfish behavior. Weeks later, Lami discovered to her horror that she was pregnant from her night with Adamu. Her parents were dismayed and furious. They pleaded with Adamu's family to convince him to do the honourable thing and marry Lami, but he steadfastly refused. Broken-hearted and outcast from the village due to her ruined reputation, Lami had nowhere to go. She ultimately fled to live with a distant relative across the river in another town. There, she gave birth to Adamu's son alone and in secret. The boy's head was enormous, bigger than any baby's head the midwife had ever witnessed. Lami named him Buba, which meant blessing in her native language, hoping her son would indeed be blessed despite his odd appearance and the circumstances of his birth. As for Adamu, he tried to put the whole sordid affair with Lami out of his mind. A few years later, he turned his affections to the sweet, kind-natured Aisha. She was so pure and virtuous, the polar opposite of Lami. Aisha was delighted when Adamu finally proposed, and they were joyfully married soon after. However, the new couple struggled for years to conceive a child of their own. Adamu began to lose hope that Aisha would ever get pregnant. Aisha went to the village witch doctor, who gave her an herbal. Sure enough, her belly finally swelled with a child. Adamu was overjoyed to at last be having a baby, his own little heir. For 9 long months, Aisha took very good care of herself, eating healthy foods and resting as much as she could. She couldn't wait to meet her little one. Finally, the day came for the baby to arrive. The village midwife Halima was called. After many hours of labour pains, Aisha gave one last big push, and out came a baby boy. But Halima's eyes grew wide with shock and disbelief. This baby had an enormously large head, bigger than any head she had ever seen. It was exactly like the head of Adamu's secret son Buba, born years ago to Lami. This is very strange, Halima murmured as she cleaned off the baby. She recognised those familiar massive features instantly. But she kept her mouth shut, not wanting to create a scandal by revealing the truth she suspected. Aisha beamed with happiness despite the odd size of her baby's head. A mother's love is unconditional. But when Adamu saw the baby, his face twisted up in disgust. "What is this?" he shouted. "My son has the largest head I've ever seen. How can this be?" Adamu's heart sank as he stared at the deformed features of the child. He was transported back in time to that fateful night with Lami all those years ago. There was no mistaking it. This was surely his son with Lami reborn, having inherited her family's strange big-headed trait. The similarities were uncanny. Overcome with feelings of shame, guilt and resentment, Adamu refused to hold the baby. He shook his head angrily and stormed out of the hut, leaving poor Aisha in tears, cradling her newborn son. She named the baby Buba, which means blessing in her language, hoping against hope that one day he would be seen as such. Over the next few years, Adamu seldom spoke to Aisha or looked at Buba. He avoided the child as much as possible, consumed by hatred and regret over his past sins. Buba's head only continued to grow larger and larger as he got older, making it very difficult for him to run and play like the other village children. The kids laughed and mocked Buba's massive head, calling him Boulder Brain and other cruel names. Buba tried his best to shrug off the taunts and teasing, putting on a brave face. But deep down, the hurtful words stung like 1,000 bees. Aisha's heart broke for her son. She loved Buba deeply and assured him over and over that he was perfect just the way he was, created in the image of the divine creator. But Adamu wanted nothing to do with the strange big-headed boy. One day, when Buba was 7 years old, he overheard Adamu shouting at Aisha. "That monstrosity is not my true son," Adamu yelled. "He takes after that wretched woman Lami with his demon child's head. Why did you curse me with this abomination? Keep him away from me." Buba's eyes filled with tears at his father's hateful words. He ran into the forest, stumbling and tripping due to his heavy head weighing him down. Deeper and deeper he ran, until he was hopelessly lost in the thick trees, vines and bushes. Night fell and Buba grew frightened as he heard the sounds of wild animals nearby, their calls and roars echoing all around him. He missed his mama terribly. Just then, the friendly wrinkled face of an old man appeared, seemingly out of nowhere. He had a long white beard and kind eyes. "Why are you roaming the forest alone at night, little one?" the old man asked gently. Buba told the man about his father's anger and hatred toward him, all because of his massive head and supposed link to the woman named Lami. The old man listened patiently, nodding in understanding. "I see your heavy burden," the old man said, "but I can also see that you have a tremendous heart and beautiful spirit inside that big head of yours. You must not let your father's cruelty define you, dear child." The old man leaned in and peered at Buba with his bright, wise eyes that seemed to pierce into Buba's very soul. "I am a mahu," the old man explained, "a powerful spirit guide from the world beyond this one. I was sent here to help you fulfill your destiny, Buba, for you have a great challenge and journey ahead." Buba's eyes widened with fascination and wonder. "A mahu? What does that mean? What's my destiny?" "Deep in the forest there is an enchanted cave," the mahu began. "Hidden inside that cave is a powerful talisman that has been protected for generations upon generations by the mahu spirits. Only a special soul like you, born into adversity and hardship yet still pure of heart, can be entrusted to claim that talisman and use its magic for good." Buba felt a strange stirring inside him, as if he'd been waiting all his life for this very moment. He nodded solemnly at the mahu for him to continue. "To reach the cave and prove yourself worthy, you must first complete 3 nearly impossible tasks," said the mahu spirit. "The first task tests your physical strength and endurance. The second challenges your mind and courage. And the third requires a kind and generous spirit." The mahu rifled through the pouch at his side and produced 3 small items: a heavy rock, a bronze key, and a handful of beads made from cowrie shells. "This rock represents your first challenge," the mahu said, handing the large stone to Buba. "You must take it and hike deep into the mountains until you reach the peak. There you will find a massive boulder blocking the entrance to a hidden cave passage. Use this rock to smash through the boulder, allowing you to enter. Only then will you have conquered the test of physical strength." Buba gulped nervously but nodded, tucking the weighty rock into a satchel at his side. He could feel the heft of it tugging down already. "This ancient bronze key is for your second trial," the mahu continued, handing Buba the tarnished but intricately carved key. "Once inside the cave passage, you will come to an enormous rushing underground river. There is only one way across, a precarious rope bridge high above the raging waters, but the bridge has been broken for centuries. Use this key to repair the bridge and cross over to the other side. Only by conquering your fears will you prove your mental courage." Buba gripped the key tightly, wondering how he would possibly accomplish such a daunting task. But he had no choice except to try his best. Finally, the mahu poured the handful of cowrie shells into Buba's palm. "These shells represent your third and final trial, a test of your spirit. On the other side of the underground river, you will enter into the heart of the enchanted cave. There you will encounter several of my fellow mahu guides, some appearing quite fearsome and menacing, but you must look into their eyes and see the good and kindness within each one. If you can see their inner light and souls rather than judge based on outward appearances, and give them these cowrie shells as a gesture of sharing and generosity, only then will you have completed the third task." Buba considered the cowrie shells, realizing the mahu was giving him a chance to prove he had learned not to judge by appearances alone, just as his father had wrongly judged him his entire life based on his massive head. He felt resolute in his determination to succeed at this last crucial step. The mahu smiled kindly at the young boy. "Pass all 3 challenges, Buba, and you will be rewarded with the powerful talisman that will change your father's hardened heart for good. I believe you have the strength, courage, and spirit to claim it. Now go and follow the stream. It will lead you straight to the mountain path." With a lump in his throat, Buba threw his arms around the old mahu spirit in a warm embrace. "Thank you for your belief in me. I will not let you down," he vowed. And with that, Buba gathered his supplies and set off along the stream, beginning his epic quest. The first challenge proved incredibly arduous. Buba hiked for 2 full days and nights, stopping only for brief rests. His big head made the journey even more punishing, throwing off his balance so that he frequently stumbled over rocks and roots. But he pushed on with grim determination, fueled by the belief the mahu had in him. When at last he crested the final summit, surrounded by soaring mountain peaks, he felt a surge of triumph. There ahead was the boulder, so enormous it looked impassable. Buba pulled the heavy stone from his satchel and flung it with all his might at the boulder, once, twice, again and again, until his arms ached from the effort. Sweat poured down his face as he kept throwing, refusing to surrender. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a hairline crack began to splinter across the boulder's surface. One final heave, putting every ounce of Buba's strength and weight behind it, sent the rock sailing straight into the crack, and the boulder shattered in a tremendous explosion of rubble and dust. With the boulder cleared, the dark cave passage yawned open before Buba. Taking a deep breath, he ducked inside to face his next trial. Navigating the pitch-black tunnels was disorienting and treacherous, and Buba lost all sense of direction. Eventually, the deafening sound of rushing water grew louder, until at last he came to a chasm so deep he couldn't see the bottom through that gloom. Spanning the gap was the remains of an ancient rope bridge, tattered and falling apart after centuries of rot and decay. Buba peered down at the key in his hand, wondering what use it could possibly be for rebuilding this ruined bridge. But then he noticed an intricately carved indentation on the cavern wall, the same shape as the key. Without hesitating further, he fitted the key into the space and turned it hard. At once, the entire cave rumbled and shook as bronze mechanisms ground to life for the first time in ages. A series of pulleys began lowering a fresh new rope bridge from high above, stretching all the way across the deadly chasm. Buba's face broke into a relieved grin. He had done it. Tucking the key back into his satchel, he steeled his nerves and began to edge across the swaying rope bridge, careful not to look down. Every step jostled his unbalanced head, making his footing even more precarious. Below, the underground river cascaded with a ferocious roar. Buba's heart pounded in his ears as he thought about how far the fall would be if he slipped. But he didn't slip, not once. He kept inching along, leaning forward to offset his heavy head, until at last his feet found solid ground on the other side. Buba had proven his courage, and he let out a whoop of victory. Deeper into the enchanted cave he trekked, the path now smoothing out. After several twists and turns, he entered into an enormous cavern, the heart of the sacred place. Stalactites and stalagmites jutted up all around like ancient fangs, making the space seem alive. Mystical crystals in hues of sapphire and amethyst cast an ethereal glow. Buba swallowed hard and crept forward, clutching the cowrie shells in his sweaty palm. Before long, he sensed he wasn't alone. Shadows shifted and figures began to materialize from the darkness. One by one, the other mahu spirits appeared, all manner of bizarre beasts, hulking monsters, and twisted creatures. Buba gasped, frozen in fear and awe at their terrifying appearances. A massive bear-like being with glowing red eyes emerged, snarling and gnashing its fangs. Buba yelped and stumbled back a step, nearly dropping the cowrie shells in his panic. Then a sleek panther entity with razor-sharp claws unsheathed itself from the shadows, hissing menacingly. Another creature that looked like a half-human, half-serpent hybrid joined them, flicking a forked tongue. Buba felt his courage rapidly draining as more and more menacing mahu spirits surrounded him, closing in. He squeezed his eyes shut and willed himself to look past their monstrous outer forms, to see the good within them just as the first mahu guide had instructed. He sought their inner light. When Buba reopened his eyes and truly gazed at the spirits, he saw not monster but wise souls. Their eyes, burning like embers, glimmering like gemstones, whirling like endless depth. They were the eyes of kind, ancient, loving beings. Buba's fear melted away in an instant, replaced by humility and gratitude for the presence of such sacred entities. With a trembling hand, Buba extended the cowrie shells outward as an offering. "Please, these are for you," he said in a meek voice. The spirits seemed to nod in approval, their body language shifting from threatening to welcoming. Buba had passed the test. He had looked past their appearances to find their inner beauty. One by one, the spirits began to transform before Buba's awestruck eyes. They morphed into figures even more wondrous. Lithe dancers with wildflowers woven into their manes, radiant beings wreathed in golden light, winged angels and celestial guardians, the air filled with their joyous laughter and melodies of peace. In the centre of the sparkling cavern, a beam of pure white light pierced down from above, illuminating a golden pedestal. Resting atop it was an ornate pendant, its emerald-encrusted eye design shimmering with power. "You have proven yourself pure of spirit and strength of character, young Buba," the first Mahu guide spoke, rising up in a whirl of stars. "You did not judge by appearances alone, but saw into our